Welcome to my third video in the Steps Method concept series. Today I'm going to discuss elimination of defense. In the second video we discussed defense, and this time I'm going to discuss the other side of the coin, elimination of defense. So there is already an attack, but there's a defender or something else, an escape square for the king, preventing from the attack being successful. In the steps method, there are 5 ways of elimination of defense: blocking, luring away, interfering, chasing away, and capturing. As you notice, it's not called elimination of the defender, but it's called elimination of defense, because blocking doesn't eliminate a defender, a piece, but eliminates an escape square for the king by forcing an enemy piece on that square. So the acronym that I use with my students is BLIC: blocking, luring away, interfering, chasing away, and capturing. Just as a reminder, in the second video we discussed defending, and we had the acronym PC-MIC: protect, capture, move away, interpose, and counterattack. So I will now present a number of examples of each of the different ways of elimination of defense. So in this position, let's orient ourselves. We see a bishop on g6, staring down to the square b1 and taking away the square c2 for the king. The position of the king has been weakened by the pawn move b3, has weakened the squares b2 and a3. Every pawn move that you make strengthens squares and weakens squares. And we see that bishop a3 would be checkmate if it wasn't for the defender knight c4 protecting the square a3. So we capture by playing rook takes c4, and after white takes back, bishop a3 is checkmate. So this is the first one, a very common one, so I start with the easy ones, capturing, chasing away, luring away, and then go to the more difficult ones that are less common, interfering and blocking. Another example of capturing, again we see that the f2 pawn is missing and that the king, the white king, is vulnerable. Black is to move. The knight on g3 is covering the squares f1 and h1. And bishop c5 would be checkmate if it wasn't for the defense of the queen and the knight. So we take the queen, and after the queen takes back, we have bishop c5 checkmate. So we lure away the queen and we capture the knight. In this example, we also luring away the defender. The bishop on b3 is taking away many squares of the king on h8, and we play rook d8 check, queen takes c3, queen d4, queen d4 checkmate. So luring away is attracting the enemy piece to a square, after which the combination becomes possible. So we saw capturing, luring away. Another way of eliminating the defense is chasing away. We see rook c8 would be checkmate. Black has a major vulnerability with the back rank. We chase the knight by playing a5. And then after knight d5, rook c8 becomes possible. Of course, after a5, black doesn't have to give up their knight, but then the material balance is in white's favor and white will win the game. Let's go to another form of chasing. So we see again a weakened back rank for white. The king is on h1. There's no flight squares. Rook f1 would be checkmate, but that's defended at the moment twice by the rook on c1 and the queen on c4. And if we play b5, we force the queen on c4 to leave the diagonal f1 c4. So after queen c6, for instance, queen f1, rook takes f1, rook takes f1, it is checkmate again. So chasing away. So luring away is, you could say, pull. We are pulling an enemy piece to a certain square. We attract it. And chasing away is push. We push an enemy piece from where it currently is. And in this case, and in the previous case, it was by attacking it with a pawn. Let's go to interfering. Interfering, in this case, is knight f4. So the queen on g3 is defending the rook on d6. And what we do is we put a piece, in this case, in between the defender, the queen on g3, and the rook on d6. And after knight f4, we have a double attack. The knight is threatening knight e2 checkmate, double attack. And the black queen is threatening queen takes d6, taking the rook. So interfering is putting a piece in between the defender and the target. This one is a little bit more complicated, so let's orient ourselves. White would like to play rook f8, but after queen f8, rook takes f8, the rook cannot take on f8 because the rook is currently pinned by the queen on e1. If the rook on f1 would take the queen on e1, the rook would take, and after queen f1, rook takes f1, it would be checkmate. The queen on e1 is defending the rook, and the rook on e8 is defending the queen. And we can put a piece in between by playing knight e4. And now white has a triple threat, taking the queen on e1, taking the rook on e8, and playing rook f8. So after queen takes e4, queen f8, we have the mate that we are looking for. So when we were discussing double attack in the first video, we found a very useful rule, and that is to make two moves with the same color and find a mate. Just to get ideas and to find threats, mating threats. So if you want to identify a mating square, you make two moves with the same color. And in this case, you would say, oh, it's probably not safe. But white has the move bishop d6. Because bishop d6 threatens mate rook f8. So bishop d6, rook f8 in the starting position would be two moves with the same color and mate. So why does this work? Well, the queen on e6 is being pinned, so the queen cannot take it. And white is threatening to take the queen on e6 with queen takes e6. So now the remaining question is, what would happen if the rook would take the bishop? Then we have queen b8, and black can give up all their material, but in the end this leads to a mate. Let's go back to the original position. We would play here queen b8 immediately without the move bishop d6. Then, of course, black can interpose and with the queen of the rook, and the combination doesn't work yet. So we prepare it with bishop d6, interfering with the defense of the rook of c6 to the queen on e6. Blocking. So blocking, as I mentioned in the introduction, is putting an enemy piece on an escape square for the king. And to find it, in the orientation, many times you just say, what if I give a check, right? So in this case, you could say, what happens if I play g3? Oh, the king escapes to h3. And that gives us a hint about what we have to accomplish. So we found actually why the combination doesn't work by brute force trying a check and seeing why it doesn't work. And so blocking takes away that square by forcing the bishop on e6 to take the rook, and now g3 is made. So blocking is elimination of defense, and it forces an opponent's piece on an escape square of the king. This is the first example. Let's see one more example. So if you would have this position in your orientation, you could say, oh, what happens after queen d2? You see that the king escapes to e5, and that gives you an idea. Is it somehow possible to avoid the king going to e5? Well, we can play e5, and then we see that if the king would take, the queen on g3 would be lost. If the king moves to e3, the queen would be lost. So the only thing that white can do is take the pawn, and then queen d2 works. So let's close out with a game from Anand, the five-time world champion. So in this game, his opponent played queen g4. And at the moment, the rooks on a8 and d8, e8 are connected. So we can interfere the defense of the rook, of both rooks, by playing the move bishop d8. So now the rook on a8 is under attack by the queen on d5, and the rook on e8 is under attack by the rook on e1. Black has, of course, several captures. The first capture that you might look at is rook takes e1, rook takes e1. At the moment, still the rook on a8 is hanging, so let's assume that black tries to save their rook. Now we have a check. The bishop interposes, and after queen d6, white is winning by attacking the pin piece one more time. So let's go back to this position, and we see bishop d8 is interfering. If the rook takes, white takes, and after rook takes d8, rook takes d8, we have again interposing. So just to be clear, elimination of defense, bishop d8 interfering. The rook on a8 is defending the rook on e8. e8 was defending a8, and we put a piece in between the defending piece and the target. In this case, suddenly we have two targets and there are two defending pieces. Bishop f8 is defending, so not elimination of defense. And it protects the king by putting a piece in between the king and the attacker, the rook on d8. White brings another attacker, rook e8, and threatens mate by taking the bishop on f8. So how can black defend? If black plays here, queen g1, queen c5, white goes into an easy winning pawn ending. So that is not an option. But black has the option to create some space for the king by playing h5. So now after rook takes f8, the king can go to h7, and after rook h8, king g6, black escapes. So h5, and now we get to the second way of elimination of defense that is not so trivial, which is blocking. We play the move g6, taking away the flight square, because in this case, if the queen takes, we put an enemy piece on the escape square of the king, and after rook takes h8, rook takes f8, rook h8, it is checkmate. So g6 is blocking, and let's go back to the original position. We have bishop g4, bishop d8 interfering, bishop f8 interposing, g6 blocking, taking away the escape square of the king. And of course, it doesn't matter how black takes. If black takes with the pawn, also in that case, the escape square of the king is gone. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you for the next video soon, I hope. Bye.